And we are back, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Squeeze Pod. And it's a very, very special episode because not only do we have an illustrious, most amazing, most wonderful person coming on, this person is very special to my heart. So without further ado, let us introduce to you the most illustrious Miss Senior DC of 2019 to 2021. This lovely lady also is the owner and proprietor of Cinnamon Babies. On top of that, her lovely smile is award-winning and has been passed down through generations to myself. This is my mother, Miss Senior DC.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here with Juice. It is an honor, more than he even knows. He is my hero.
And yeah, guys, I just want you to know this is one of our number one fans, so we really appreciate her for even showing up because she is a very busy lady. It's hard to get her on the line. I'm extremely happy to get her down here and just so you guys can get to know. So how are you doing today?
I'm excellent. I'm blessed and highly favored.
That's good. That's wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, let us know age, if you don't mind. Of course, where you come from. Just give them a little bit about yourself so that the people here can know you better like I do.
Okay. I'm a very energetic senior born in 1951 in West Palm Beach, Florida, the Sunshine State. I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, the Sunshine State. My early years were spent with my grandmother, my great uncle, and my grandmother's father on a street that was a dirt road that is no longer a dirt road now. It's Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard in West Palm Beach, Florida. My mother, my sisters and brothers are now still living in Florida. For the last 34 going on 35 years, I have been in the DMV area. I have worked as long as I can remember for my people. I'm a political person, Pan-Africanist, and I love my people.
And if you want to be a little bit more specific for the viewers who might not know who your people are, who are your people, Miss Senior DC?
My people are the Rainbow Coalition of Washington, D.C.
And the Rainbow Coalition, for anyone who is unaware, is the multitude and multifaceted community of the D.C. area, meaning everyone in the D.C. community.
Yes, definitely. I don't want to leave out a single soul. A little bit about my upbringing. Most people don't realize or had not realized that it was a great number of African Americans living in the Florida area. And that we could go to the beach and spend the day in the beach, on the beach, around the beach, in the water, out of the water. So, one little small joke is that we didn't realize, being African American or people of melanin, that we would get sunburn. So I remember the first time I ever got sunburn, and we were back home after a full 12 hours at the beach, and we were burning up. My skin was red and everything. And what my mother did, it was aloe in the yard. Aloe was everywhere. So they took aloe and just rubbed it on our skins and never said anything about suntan lotion or anything like that. We didn't know that we needed to wear sunscreen. I can remember times when we would see watermelons growing on the beach. We would have what we would call crab races. We would take a string and put on one of the legs of the crabs, and each person would have a crab, and we would have a race down to the water. So those were, we didn't have computers, we didn't have the games, we didn't have any of that. So we had to make up our games. And I can remember the sea grape trees. Sea grape trees were our fans. They had huge leaves, and we would pull the leaves off and fan, sit on the beach and just fan. And that was our recreation.
Now, I heard you say something, and I apologize for cutting you off here.
Yes.
But so you were saying that, back then we had the toys, or, we had to make our own fun. What was the difference for you then? What did you feel like is different for you then than it is now for people of today who are given all this internet stuff? Do you feel like we have lost anything with it?
I feel strongly that we've lost a lot because we had to use our imaginations and make up games. Games weren't made for us. We had to make them up ourselves. So we had a lot of hand and eye coordination games, marbles, pick-up sticks, jackstones. They got tennis. We just had one that, I don't ever see anybody playing now is Chinese checkers. We played regular checkers. I didn't learn how to play chess until my son taught me how to play chess. And he learned how to play chess in kindergarten, I think. So we had to use our minds a lot more than, you all, the young people of today, do. And the internet, I don't know what we would have done if we had the internet. We would have just been watching games. But we were more active. I mean, running, jumping, skipping, hopscotch, all the activities that kept us really, really active. And the parents, what I really enjoyed so much was we were church people also. We had to go to church on Sunday. We had to be there. Most of the time we were in church all day. Then we had vacation Bible school. But the most fun that we had were the cookouts and the food, because we were my great-grandfather. And I'm going to take a pause for a minute. What I didn't realize until I left Florida and went to New York and lived for like 10 years is that we personally lived on a compound, because my great-grandfather built his home, he built my grandmother's home, and he built my great-uncle's home. And we all lived together. So when I went to Africa, even though I studied African culture, they didn't tell us the actual living arrangements. We knew it was a compound, but what did a compound mean? That meant that the whole family, the whole extended family, lived within that fence, within that area. I know when we were growing up, we could not go outside of the fence. That was a no-no. And because of segregation and everything, sundown meant you had to be in the house by sundown, because that could be life or death. And I think it's sort of like that now, but in different circumstances. My great-grandfather worked for a lumber yard, and he built rocking chairs. He built his house. And when he came home every day, I had three uncles, a set of twins, and another uncle. They were 2 and 3 years older than me. And because those were my grandmother's children, we were all in the yard together. I had a sister that was 2 years younger than me. But when he came home from work, we would all be standing by the fence. We were not in school by then. School was that yard. And we waited by the fence for him to come home. And when he came home, we knew he was going into his tool shed. He went to Big Mama and asked her what needs to be done on the house. So every day he was checking on that house. And we would all go and grab his tools out of the tool shed, and we helped him with whatever repairs he needed to do on the house. I can remember the joy. It may not sound like a joy, but when it rained and the roof was leaking, we had to run and get pots and put to those places where the water was dripping until Papa could get on the roof and repair it. So that was my first example of what a real man was. A real man could fix things. You know, I remember when our bathroom was put in. I remember being outside and having to take a bath in a tin tub. I remember my mother and them washing clothes in these big tin tubs and boiling them. And, you know, it was to think back now to see how much progress we have made as people. I remember my grandmother and them, my great-grandmother and grandfather and them didn't have a telephone. So when somebody was coming down the street, they were yelling their names, and so we knew who was coming to the house. But when the first telephone got on the block, it was what I say a community line, but it was a party line then. We used to call it a party line. So anybody could be on the phone talking, and you could hear them telling all their business. So going on to the next stage of the television, this was the biggest thing. We had a little black and white TV with an antenna on it. You know, the TV turned off at 12 o'clock. It was during that time.
And hold on. Just because you know that a lot of our viewers are younger, so they don't even know that there was a black and white television. So for anybody who is watching, because she actually started answering questions I was going to ask, like what was some of the bigger things that has changed in the time that we have, gone from, from the time that she was a young lady and the time of now where, me as her last and only son, happen to be living in.
Yes.
But please go ahead. So the TV would have black and white and had antennas for the people out there. And just so you know that these TVs were over 50 pounds. They were not flat.
No.
These tube TVs were about the size of your entire dresser, maybe bigger. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the speaker was one big sound box somewhere found on it, okay? I had my run-in with it a little bit when I was younger, and she'll probably get into it a little bit more in detail, but one of your best friends with those old tube TVs was aluminum foil, okay?
That's right. What he's talking about, it was a long little thing, two spokes out like this, and sometime when the television went out, we wrapped aluminum foil around that so the reception would come in a little better. And then sometime you felt like kicking it over because you still couldn't get it. But 12 o'clock, that's it. TV is off. All the channels. What I can remember was NBC and ABC. I don't even think it was CBS. I may stand to be corrected. But it was like only 2 or 3 channels. And they went off at 12 o'clock. So the next big change was disco. And I left Florida. I graduated from high school in 1969. And I was sick of Florida. Nothing was happening in Florida. Nothing. We all of us just felt either you got to college or you came to Washington, D.C. if you could type. You got a typing job and you came to the city to work for the federal government. Or for me, I went to New York. My father was in New York. And I wanted to go to FIT, that's Fashion Institute of Technology. That was the top. My whole thing was hair, fashion, makeup, modeling. I have to back up a little bit.
Hold on one second, because we do want to focus in on that fashion part of what you were seeking on, only because we know that you spent a large time of your life in the fashion world doing your best to succeed, and I would wanted to take a little bit of a dive into that because I know you were on a lot of the runways at the time in New York and things like that, so we want to talk about that because a lot of these people are looking to strive towards that type of greatness, but we want to know what it was like to get in and then try to strive in that world a little bit.
Okay, I want to back up because when I was 15 years old, it was a department store called Jordan Marsh, and they had what we call freeze modeling. And because I was tall and thin at that time, about 5'8", and I was 15 years old, I went into the modeling. The teen magazine, I was one of the teen models. I was the first in my county, in my county, to become a fashion model, and that was at 15. So that started my direction. Either I wanted to be a model, and even I jumped over some things. I started sewing with my mother and my grandmother at the age of 6 years old. They had an old foot pedal sewing machine that we would get on.
And just so anybody who doesn't know what a foot pedal sewing machine, that means you had to press it up and downwards to make it go, because a lot of you guys might think that you just pressed it down and it was automated. No. You had to pump your foot up and down one by one to get the needle to stitch in and out. Okay?
That's right.
It was very manual labor. A lot of the things that you guys dread today.
Don't say dread.
Oh, they dread it. They definitely do. There are so many people that would listen. Why are there already several different rice cookers when all you have to do is boil a pot of water?
Oh, to make it quicker.
Into
But let's go back to what I was talking about. The foot pedal, it was a Singer sewing machine. And you, after a certain length of time, you could develop speed on that sewing machine with your foot to make garments. I know a lady in our neighborhood, I can't call her name, but she was prolific at seamstress. Everybody in the community wanted her designs. So I wanted to pattern myself after her. During that time, when we were growing up, we didn't have any black fashion models. So when I stepped in at 15 and started, and by the time of 18, 19, that's when I went to New York to be with my father, and to get into Fashion Institute of Technology and pick up modeling jobs. What Juice is asking me, New York at that time in the 60s, because it was the civil rights movement, the natural hair, we were wearing afros, we were embellishing our jeans, and we were excellent at that. I know I would go to the wholesale places and buy all my beads and studs and spend, what they call bedazzle now. We didn't have the machines to bedazzle. You had your hammer, your nails, and your fingers to put it together. The fashion industry is for those of us that you need to be very careful who you get to photograph you. You need to investigate who's doing your photographs, because we can ask our most famous person, Vanessa Williams, about that, not knowing who's photographing you and how you're being photographed. That's very important. And with the pornography industry so prolific, so what I really want to make note to anybody that's interested in going, male or female, going into the fashion world, is to be very careful of the P film industry.
Or the S industry, any adult type of content, anything of the nature that would be a little too promiscuous for, the wrong eyes. But back to the main question, we wanted to know that what was it like when competing in the fashion world, and what was it, particularly like for you when you were getting to, go into runways and stuff like that?
When I started out, the door was wide open. The door was wide open. I mean, it was wide open. They didn't have any, because I was so skinny. They didn't want any curves. They wanted a hanger. That's what they called it. They wanted a hanger. So they just draped the clothes over you. So I was a hanger, and I didn't have any problem. They didn't have any problems with my hair or anything. Some of the things that I hear now. When I kind of sidestep, but I started at 6 years old. And by the time I was in high school, I was a full-fledged seamstress designer. I never wore anything twice, never. And I was going to the dime store buying a little piece of fabric here and a little piece of fabric. And I had several.
And I just wanted to let the people of the channel, of course, know that the dime store is the equivalent to what a dollar store, now dollar plus though, is today. I would have loved to live in a world where there was a dime store and I could go buy everything for a dime. It would have been a lovely place, but we live in the here and now, and inflation has obviously killed the dime and the dollar store.
Yes.
So
Killed the dollar store.
It is dead, guys. But please continue.
Okay. What we call a dime, it was called a 5 and dime, and it was Woolworths. But what they sold everything. But just consider the time that I came along, we could not sit at a counter and eat. We had to go and buy our stuff, pay for it, and leave. You couldn't try on any shoes. You couldn't do any of those things. But back to my designing. Because of that, and because of being in a kind of Caribbean kind of climate, a lot of the people, our women had voluptuous shapes. Small waistline, big hips, we call it the Pepsi-Cola. So those are the clients that I had to make clothes for. And I can't call a name, but I had several customers like that I custom made their clothes, everything that they wore. And so from that, by the time I got out of high school, and along with that, I was a very, very active student. I was in the student government. I was president of the home economics. I was a school safety patrol. And when I was in middle school, I was a majorette, and that was the biggest thing. I was a majorette, and not only was I a majorette, I was drum majorette, and I made my outfit. So I designed you might as well say a costume. Okay, my school, we were known as the Panthers, and our school colors were blue and gold, and I had a satin blue and gold outfit with my baton, and I led the band and the majorettes, which is a whole nother story altogether because I was also in the band. I played a musical instrument in the band. And just a sidebar, my mother was so very, very strict that I got in all of those activities so I could get out the house. I want to be very plain. It's a joke, but that was the only way. I had to do all of my work. I had to take care of my sister, do my sister's hair, take care of my 2 brothers. I did all of that. I don't even know how I did all of that, just so I could get out of the house and go and participate in these activities. I mean, it was no movie theater during the day or anything, so we had to participate in school activities or it was church. So when I run that list of activities that I was involved in, it was so I could get out the house. I never went to a pool party. I don't think I even owned a bathing suit growing up because my mother just didn't play that.
Can you tell us some other downfalls you had as being an older sister to 3 and to a mother who was extremely strict?
Okay, the biggest thing in any Southern person, when you're the oldest child, you have to take your sisters and brothers everywhere with you, everywhere. I mean, you can't darken the door without taking them. And another little sidebar, my first little so-called boyfriend, poor Kevin.
We know it's Kevin now. we know Kevin.
Everybody knew my mother. And my mother, they knew how strict she was. And he had to stand outside and talk to me. I could sit on the porch and talk to him, but that's as far as it was going to go. And they said, you don't want to mess with her mother at all. Plus, she got 3 uncles that would get down your throat too, so you better not bother with her. So that was a sidebar to me So the best thing that I could have done when I got out of high school was move to New York City. In New York City, oh my God, the first time we got there, I couldn't even breathe because it was small. And living in Florida, the air is fresh and clean and fresh and everything. And to be in smog, we couldn't breathe. I mean, it's like, what is going on? And then they said it was the smog, it was the cars and everything. But my father owned a brownstone in Crown Heights in Brooklyn. So we had so much. This is another thing that is funny. Okay, I would like to share some stories from my childhood of being the oldest child. I have several, but one that I want to share because I had to fight for my brothers. My brothers were 6 and 7 years younger than me. And because I was the oldest, we had some next door neighbors that would always steal their toys. And my mother would send me over to go and retrieve these toys. And the mother of the children said, if it's on my porch, it belongs to me. And I was like, what? So one day, another next door neighbor and her sister, my sister, had a big mouth. She was always telling on, she was one of those people that told on people. If she knew something that was not supposed to be done, she was going to tell the parents. So for that reason, we were always in trouble, and she was getting in fights, and they would come to my classroom, your sister down there, they fighting. And I got to run down there and get my sister and jump in a fight that I didn't even know what was going on. But because of my sister, I had to defend her. And it was not always easy because sometimes you got scratched up, you got tore up, your clothes got torn off you. But my mother was like this. If anything happened and you there and you don't defend or you don't jump in the middle of it, you can't come in this house. She would have her foot on the door. And if she looked out there and she saw somebody coming up behind you, you couldn't get in that house. You could not get in the house until you fought.
So I think that's an amazing thing because, nowadays people don't teach their kids to fight at all because it's more so, to be nonviolent and things like that. But I think, and I know this is not something that you particularly taught me, that violence might not be the answer, but it is an answer to the question, if you fuck around, you are going to find out. And now I just wanted to ask you, do you think that it is to our detriment, meaning that we have lost out by not letting our kids go out and, having fisticuffs with one another, and we've lost out to guns and gun violence?
That's a big one, and that's a hard one to answer because I feel that if it was no guns, nobody would get killed. Why are so many guns in our community? It's no accident, and we talk about this all the time. When guns were not in our community, we fought, but we made friends. Most of the time, the people that we fought with became our best friends. So I don't want it to seem like it was just violence. My mother said, I don't want you going out there starting a fight, but if you have to end it, you end it honorably. It's always honor with it. You don't have any knives, you don't have any guns, you have a regular fist fight. And then it's ended, and then you can become friends. I know a lot of people that we fought with, I can talk with now, and we laugh. We don't even understand why we did it or what was the reason. It didn't even make any sense. But one thing that Juice didn't ask me that I want to talk about now is teen pregnancies. I know I lost a lot of friends. To teen pregnancies. And what we had a class called Home Economics that taught us, they tried to, but our sex education wasn't up to par. When a young lady got pregnant, in the community, she had to leave, go away, or she could never come back to school. And I think that was the worst because I lost my best friend to that. But the thing that was, to me, was so horrible, the guys didn't get put out of school. So they could have multiple children and still be in school, but the girls would be out of school. And I felt that that was unfair. But coming up to now, I think that it's a little popular. It's too popular. But we need to have classes for mothers. We need to have classes for fathers. We need to have more emphasis on how do you fall in love? How do you care about a person? How do you get your goals for your future without having children that are fatherless or motherless? And what particular things can you do not to be depressed, not to lose your sight of your goals and aspirations? What are your treasures? Because we are treasure hunters, and we should be finding the treasure in people. And if it's a situation where it's a young couple, that we as elders help them to get back into school, get their education, get a tech job, or get whatever it is, but help them to be successful in what they're doing.
Well, how early would you think that it would be appropriate to teach them? Because, you know, with now and all the internet, as you said, you know, people are having, you know, unprotected sex or unprotected X at a no, you don't have to. Unprotected X at an unalarming rate at a younger ages. So how early do you think we would have to teach these kind of things? Because it's already hard for older adults to manage that. But what would be the appropriate age you think would be to teach it? Because with all the openness of now, because I would be on a different stance, and to put it back where you do actually shame the people, and I know that might sound crazy to you, but that type of fear definitely changed how people reacted to the whole notion of if I was going to go about, you know, giving myself to someone else. But now it's so open and looked as, okay, well, you can do it because somebody else is doing it, that we have lost the primal understanding that this is not something that we should be doing unless we are procreating or unless we are truly in love with one another and we see that this is something we're going to do, you know, in the future past a year or so.
Well, now you brought up a good point. Most of us, and I say us and the young people, don't know what love is. Don't have the filter. We don't really, because it didn't come up with us. You know what I'm saying? We didn't see a mother and father or anybody that was really in love, and we weren't told that we were loved. So a lot of young people are looking for love in the wrong places.
And I love that you're saying that, but I will have to say that we can't say that for all of our people. And if we're talking about the brown and black communities, because there are definitely a plethora of people with, you know, unbroken homes, but we will speak on it as a unbroken home situation, but we won't group everyone as a unit because we weren't all in unbroken homes.
That's true. That is true. That is true. But what I want to get back to is the love. And what is love? And how do you know you're in love? How do you know that this person is committed to you? Are they just saying, I love you so I can get in bed for the ex? That's the difference. That's the big difference. And you asked about the age. I would say these with the pandemic babies now, it's almost like 6 years old. Inappropriate language you need to be teaching. From 6 years old, from the time that they can talk, what is good touch and what is bad touch. To get back to what is love and loving in a relationship, because there's so many different types of love. You have love for your family and trust. Love and trust goes hand in hand. Do you have love for someone that you just met? Do you have love and trust for someone that you're going to commit bodily fluids with? I hope I can say that.
You can.
So those are the sticking points. Even if you have a partner in a business, that's a different kind of love and a trust to be committed into doing something that's positive.
Now, I would just add, too, that it should be a trinity, and I definitely love the love and trust, but you definitely need respect as well. If you don't have that last key component, that respect, then you will lose out on certain things because you have the love and the trust, that's the initial parts. But the respect allows you to have your boundaries and for that other person to respect them and to know that they can trust that you will operate within your boundaries and then they can love you within those necessary key points.
I agree with you. I agree. And that's why it's so good for this intergenerational conversation. Because I know if I had my daughters here with you, each one, and I sit and listen to my children and to my grandchildren, because I learn generation to generation. And I also listen to my mother that's still alive. And it is a super big difference in how she raised us, how I raised my children, how my daughters are raising my grandchildren. And now I have great-grandchildren and trying to get to know the young ladies that are involved with my grandson. So I'm learning. Every day I'm learning. Every day.
And yeah, that's definitely extremely powerful because even when we had the conversation about that, if you really think about it, with grandmothers, great-grandmothers, yourself, you really have an accumulative knowledge of over hundreds of years, and people really don't even, sit there and really think about how powerful it is to even be able to talk to your grandparents and know what it's like, what they went through, and then compare it to what life is now, because of course things are going to be different, but there are going to be key consistencies, and then on top of that, there are going to be things that are going to be so similar that you can look and learn from them without having to experience them. But a lot of people nowadays like to experience things and then learn the lessons after the fact instead of, being able to see it and then know not to do it,
I like to share an experience I had today with a young lady, because I got on the bus and it was a little baby just lit up and was talking to me, and he was like 5 months old, and the mother was like shocked. I said, well, he knows that's a grandma person or a great-grandma person. So we started talking, and I was so very proud of her because she was nursing her child. She didn't have a whole big bag where she got all these bottles and everything. So it was just a pleasant conversation, and I shared with her that I was a great-grandmother, and she said, congratulations. And this little baby boy was just, I said, yeah, you telling me all your business. You telling me all the family business. And we laughed. Everybody on the bus laughed. But it's a joy to be in those environments where you can have the conversation. Because I used to drive, and what I realized with driving, that I was not interacting with people.
What are some of the main differences you have seen today that were completely different for dating in the world now?
It was no such thing as dating. We did not date. It was you were a scandalous person if you had more than one partner. But what I think and I see, it's needed to be able to date. Not go to bed with somebody, but to date, to get to know people. And that's a big difference. And I'm talking with my mother. She said that's the big difference between her era and our era, that she wished that she had had the opportunity to date and didn't.
Well, I'll let you know that now that dating has gone completely off the rails because it's not about getting to know one another. It's more so getting to what I want and then what I can get from you. And then after that, either I'm going to be done with you or, maybe you can give me just a little bit of enough so that way I keep wanting to keep coming around. But it's not even dating anymore because people are very happy with having no title but still interacting with someone. For example, there are several relationships with no type of title, meaning no going steady, as you would like to say back in the day. But there's no girlfriend and boyfriend. There's just I'm dealing with you, and when I deal with you, I'm dealing with you. Or they even just say with friends with benefits. There are the things no strings attached. There are plethora of ways to just say that I will freely give you my body and not do anything else. And there are even people that will do exactly that. And just like we were talking about earlier, you need that trust, but then will not trust you at all. But then they are out here allowing you to enter their bodies.
And that's the key that I don't understand, because AIDS, I have a cousin that told me as an adult that AIDS was not the biggest thing. Herpes was not the biggest thing. She said it's 21 different VDs. I was like, what? I could have fell out. That you can, that will determine whether you can have children or whether you will never have children. And for females, and for males, that's very important. So I'm learning so much, and in a way it's scary, but in a way you got to have that trust, respect, and believe in the person that you're dealing with. But you got to have some conversation, some hard conversation. What is this for me? What will I accept and what I won't accept? And that's important. That's important.
So I would just ask, what are some things that you think that people could do to do better? Because I'll also ask this question too, if you can remember it as I ask this. Do you think that the institute of marriage still holds a place in today's society?
Oh, that's a big one. Oh, okay, that's a big one. The institute of marriage, whether it's still important. I would have to say, for any coupling, you need to ask the question, are we building something? What are we building? What are we doing? If we're together, because at some point, even the older sisters and brothers will tell you, in a marriage or in a long-term relationship, some of the sexual things are not as important as what you have built. Are you gonna build an institution? Are you going to build a house? I mean, it could be as simple as that. Are you going to raise children in a loving environment? What are you building? And that's the main question that you need to ask when you go into these relationships.
And I think that's actually amazing, but not even but. We definitely need to ask these difficult questions, because a lot of people move past them and, live on if it just feels good or not. And we have to get past the feel good, because that's just infatuation. And after the infatuation stage, you got to live in the real world of what the relationship, whatever that might be, really is. You were saying something about,
what are your goals? What are you building in the relationship?
I do believe that as far as the notion of dating and the idea of choice, that has caused people to now not face the consequences of both their actions or be accountable for dealing with issues within the relationship anymore, because they're like, well, if this person is giving me an issue, I can choose to go ahead and go find someone else that will do something better, but not really looking at the fact that other person will come with issues, and there'll be something that's going to be another issue for that person. So they're in the never-ending cycle of just looking.
That gets back to the original question you asked me about marriage. And I would say marriage is still relevant if you have a goal for the marriage, if you're building. But the other stuff, you gotta know the baggage. Okay, I bring XYZ baggage. What is your baggage? What are we willing to improve? What are we willing to throw out of the suitcase? What are we willing to buy something new? But we're going to stay together. Are we going to stay together? Are we going to make this work? And that's what's important in what you said. You know, hey, if we're not going to stay together, if we playing musical chairs, are we playing musical chairs? Are we playing forever game? That's the question that needs to be asked. Because you can work on things. You can work out things. And you can improve things. But you need to know that first. What are you willing to give and what are you willing not to give? And then that person or persons can decide whether they want to stay in that relationship. But marriage is important, especially in the stages of you getting ready to have children. And especially even for older people now, it's very important to have a companion, to have somebody to spend your end days together. And you're happier and you're healthier. That's really important.
Okay. So, getting out of all of the drama, we're going to take it. This one is going to be a little bit personal. We're going to take it into some motherhood questions, some things that you and I can talk about one-on-one, mano y mano.
My first year of motherhood was scary, was really scary. We had talked, back in the day, we're talking about 51 years ago, my first child. It was not a whole lot of discussions about what you were going to go through. I knew I was going to have pains. I knew I was going to have to push the baby out. But past that, I didn't know anything, right? My mother, this is a joke, and I laugh about it now. When I started having my pains, I didn't tell anybody because I know they were going to rush me to the hospital, and I know I had been sent home 2 or 3 times because everybody was scared. Nobody wanted me to have the baby at home. So the time when I was really having the pains, I walked around all day. I went to the mall. My sister had flew in from New York to Florida. We went to the mall, we ate, and I was having pains, and I just started timing them, but I didn't tell anybody. So about 7 o'clock, close to 8, I couldn't take it anymore. So I told my mother, I said, it's time for me to go. It's time to go right now. And she's like, what? So we lived like a straight shot to the hospital. We got in the car, my mother was driving. Do you know my mother drove me to my uncle's house and told my uncle to drive? I was like, we going the wrong way. I got to get to the hospital. And my uncle jumped in the car. My baby brother was in the back seat, and I was holding his hand. I was squeezing him to death. And my mother had the nerve to ask me where it hurt. I was like, Mom, you had 4 kids. You know where it hurt. Get me to the hospital. So that's something that my mother and I laugh about right now. Don't ask me any question. If any female out there, when you're in those pains, don't ask any question. Don't ask any questions. Just get the pain away. So that was my first experience where I didn't know anything. And what I like, though, that we need to institute again is that when a woman had a baby, all the women in the community came to help her. You laid in the bed. They took care of the baby. They band your belly so you didn't have a big stomach. And meals were made for you. And it was just a women's group that we need to bring back, that wound work. Because the woman, after she has a baby, needs to rest. And the old days, you were your head was wrapped up. You couldn't go nowhere. And they don't do that. They don't do that anymore. I see people fresh out of the hospital, and they got a newborn baby out. But they used to tell us that your pores are open and you can easily get sick. That was the first year.
That was it? It was more than just going to the hospital and giving birth. What was the whole year after the lovely older sister of mine was born, since you wanted to choose that?
But that
year.
was my first child.
That was the first year.
That was the first year. But this was the thing. And during that time, they don't do it now. They knocked the woman completely out to have a baby. And the baby was...
Can you explain? Because in my mind, I envision Mike Tyson coming in and knocking you.
No.
And I'm like, oh no, they did not do that to my mother. Nothing did Mike Tyson. They found the nearest heavyweight to come in. God, now you're having a baby.
Oh, no, it was not quite like that. But by the time I got to the emergency room, the first year of the first child, the baby was coming out because I had held it. She was coming out. I had my daughter in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes. So after she was delivered, they used to give you strong drugs. They don't do that anymore. That put you to sleep. I'll put it like that. And then when I woke up after having her and looking for my baby, I realized she was down the hall. And they didn't allow you during those times to take care of your own baby. The nurses took care of your baby. And then when I went home, this was a time when they were not encouraging you to nurse your own child. This is when Similac had just came on the scene.
Similac.
So Similac. What did I say?
You said it.
And it was just horrible because at that particular time, I didn't know my daughter was allergic to cow's milk. So it was my first year as a mother. I spent more time at the doctor's office than anything. And at this particular time, she was so sick and could not keep anything down and was losing weight. I told them to keep her in the hospital and run every possible test. And this is when we found out that she had sickle cell trait, which was an inherited condition from her father because I didn't have sickle cell trait. And when two parents have the trait, the child can possibly get the disease. But just one parent having the trait, it gets passed on, but you do not get the disease. So I would say my first year of motherhood was finding out what was wrong with my child. And that was not an easy job. I didn't sleep. We used to tease. I had bags under the bags because she could never sleep. She couldn't keep anything down. So if you want me to cut off there, that it was not pleasant. The first year of motherhood was not pleasant.
Okay, this one might be good. Are there any family secrets that you're keeping from me?
Keeping from you? And I'm not going to tell it out on I'm not going to tell it out on this. Oh, no. It's a secret. If it's a secret, it stays a secret.
And see, that's how my family goes down. If it's a secret, it's going to the grave. We ain't talking about nothing. No, that's fine.
That's how most black families are.
Oh, that's how most black families. I mean, no, you can't speak for all the black families. This is our family, okay? You can't speak because it's a lot of loose lip mothers out here, okay?
Oh, okay.
You know, obviously there was a reason why the saying snitches get stitches. It wasn't, and it ain't come from our house. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
I have to laugh on that one, but I think I have been totally open and honest with you because I never wanted anything to fall out of the closet. I have sat down and talked to you about everything.
And that is indeed true. And there's honestly sometimes where I think that you have overshared, honestly, because there's some things that, I didn't need to know, especially at certain ages.
Yes.
But I don't particularly have any animosity or hatred, or there's obviously no bad blood. I love you extremely much.
I appreciate that.
No
because
problem.
I didn't know what was appropriate language. I'm learning. I was learning as I go. I know I would do, if I had it to do over again, I definitely would do it different. And anything that was hurtful, I apologize for it. And I've apologized about a lot of things. And that's something that's a learned behavior, because that's not anything that I was taught. I can't talk to my mother, and she's still alive today, about certain things. And so I made it a point that I wanted to be open and honest with you all.
What is the nicest thing that I've ever done for you?
Oh, you've done so much nice. But, some of the big things that you think you've done for me,
You think? Because I'm asking what you feel like is the biggest thing I've ever done.
I would say when you were little, what the most precious that stands out in my mind, that you would go out and pick wildflowers and bring to me and say, "Mommy, I love you."
What do you want or wish for your children?
Happiness, joy. And I want my children all to come together and love each other, and just know that each one is different and individual, and everybody's going to come to their own in their own time. And I don't compare. That's one battle that I haven't won yet, is how to mend the sibling rivalry.
Coming from the sibling rivalry that goes on, it is a different type of conversation, and you as our mother can't particularly mend those wounds. And I've had this conversation in my own fields of work with other older, women of the motherhood stature, and you have to allow your children to come to their own reconciliations and things of that nature, because the things that we go through don't actually happen through you at all. It doesn't really have anything to do with you as a mother. It is just whatever we particularly, differences of opinion, differences of attitude and stature, all those kind of things just come into play when it comes into a sibling rivalry. So
can I share something?
Yeah.
Let me pause, right? As you know, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. And because I was the oldest, I was the second mother. And my mother doesn't even understand to this day why my sister and my 2 brothers will come to me before they will come to her. We are talking through things right now, and we are seniors. We are seniors. All of us are seniors. And we are talking through things that we experienced with my mother and father that we couldn't share with them. And we're working it out. And we have to be careful. But what my mother did do is that she made it so that when I'm gone, this will be who you will have to look to. So you have to stay together. And so I'm wondering whether I didn't do that, but we're doing that as seniors now, talking to each other, talking through some things, talking why, and then we have to forgive. That's the main thing. We have to forgive. A lot of things we're maybe not going to forget, but we have to forgive, and that's the part of healing. But with my children, I allowed y'all to talk to me. I know some things you haven't talked to me about. Some things I would say, write me a letter, and I may have to read it. But at least I allow you, and I'm open, and if I have to apologize or if I have to explain something, I'm willing to do that. A lot of adults, a lot of parents are not willing to do, and I was hurt. And sometimes in sharing that hurt, sometimes, not all the time, then you can begin to understand your parent or the person that you're with, because they come with some pains also. And it may not have anything, and that's important in a relationship, that you know these things or have some idea of what is going on. I know the older people used to say that if you had a boyfriend or a significant other that you were interested in, You had to bring them to the table, and they sat down and they talked to them, because we were in the same community, and then they knew their people, they knew what they were about. And so they would have a meeting of heads to decide whether that person was a good person for you or not.
So that's where the origin of what do you bring to the table actually came from, because now it's such an ambiguous term that a lot of us don't even understand what the hell what do you bring to the table is. And I honestly think that it's a stupid question to ask, because if you can't observe and see what somebody brings to the table, because a lot of people are now openly showing actions what they are, and there's not a lot of fluff in between the words. If you don't see what somebody has to offer right up front, then honestly, it might not be something you are worth dealing with, because a lot of people, you know, create in their mind afterwards with desire, you know, scenarios to be with somebody who might not be the right person for them. And I'm not saying that, you know, desire is incorrect. What I'm saying is, if you see some flaws and you're overstepping those flaws because your desire trumps that, then you are then at a problem there, because you're not holding your own boundaries for yourself, and then you're going to be susceptible to things that will then upset you long term in that relationship.
Can I share something? You triggered something in my mind, because you meet people, male, female, whatever, in a relationship, and you can see the treasure in them, and maybe they can see the treasure in you. They still may have alternative motives in the relationship, in the coupling. I'm going to say coupling. So you really need to be clear about what, even those goals, even if you set the goals. And sometimes you may need to ask the question in a different way to really see what that person is about, because it may be a using thing more than a useful thing.
So back to our motherhood part of it, because we did go on a little bit of a tangent. What do you think is your happiest memory of us?
It still was a miracle. Do you want me to get into details?
Yes, I would. So she's going to give you the origin story of Juice. This is before I was a little huggy. This is the original story of Juice before Drip Drop was even dripped and dropped.
Oh, wow. Juice is a miracle child. Juice is a love child. His father and I were very much in love, so he was made and groomed in love. And it's not many people can say that. But he was a twin. I had a 20-year-old, I had a 14-year-old, and here comes Juice. And because of my age, I thought I was going into early menopause. And
just so that the people have context, because
Okay.
just to let other women who might be, you know, experiencing some things at a later age of life, let them understand so that they can relate with you.
Okay. I was 40 years old when I had him. And I was also a grandmother. But the miracle was that he was a twin, and he was the sole survivor of the twins. And I saw him on a sonogram at 6 weeks. And that's something that we have to understand about abortions and everything. 6 weeks old, they have a heartbeat, they're moving, everything. The doctor came in, my oldest daughter took me to the emergency room because I thought, I didn't know what was going on. And the doctor told me, I have some good news and I have some bad news. I was not trying to have a child, not at all at that time. I was not trying to conceive, but the doctor told me, I have some good news and I have some bad news. So I asked the doctor, I said, what is the bad news? And he said, you're pregnant, but you lost a baby. And I was like, what? I said, well, please tell me some good news. He said, but it's another one still there. And I was like, what? And I didn't believe him. And that's when they put the sonogram on and the camera to let me see. So that was at 6 weeks, people, 6 weeks, I saw my son. And this is the other journey with Juice.
And these are supposed to be the happiest moments. So I hope these.
This is happy. This is happy. This is really funny.
Okay.
This is really funny. At 5 months, I had to do an amniocentesis. And that was because
what is an amniocentesis? Because I'm unfamiliar with that.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Okay, amniocentesis is when they take some fluid out of your the sac to see whether there's any genetic problems with you and see how you're progressing because of my age. And when they took the needle, it's a big needle that they puncture through. And you know, if anybody knows me, I hate needles. But I wanted to make sure that my baby at 5 months old was okay. When they took that needle, and they have a screen showing when they put the needle down through your stomach, go into to the sac. When they put that needle down, your little hands did like this to grab the needle. The lady screamed, and I was like, what's wrong? She said, I have never seen a baby, 5 months now, 5 months, pregnant, grab at the needle. And I was looking at it too. So I said, he's okay. He's okay. And I knew it was a boy. I knew from day one that you were going to be a boy. I never doubted that. So that was the joy. That was the joke. People screaming. And when I tell that story, nobody, if I hadn't seen it myself, I would not have believed it. But you grabbed for the needle that they were pulling the fluid out, and then they told me you were okay when the test came back and everything.
So as we wrap things up, I just wanted to ask you, what have been some of the best and the worst things that you have experienced while getting older as a mother?
The best things that I have acquired since getting older is wisdom, because most of my friends were elders, and I sat and listened to them, and that's a joy that I cannot not share enough. Living in New York and sitting at the feet of Dr. Ben, Dr. Youssef, being with Queen Mother Moore. Okay, motherhood, wisdom, knowledge, and knowing when to say, I don't know something. That is the key point. Because I know I share a lot. If I don't know something, I will get someone to get the information for you, because I don't know everything. I cannot. Some of the downfalls were my illnesses, and of being a colon cancer survivor, of being a brain tumor survivor, and then kicking back and doing exercise and breathing, and just the joy of living. Those are my statements.
Okay. And to wrap it all up, we want to know that this one might be a little hard, so please take your time if you need to. What is the one thing that you would like your children to remember about you when you are gone?
That's a good one. What I would love for my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to remember is that I did all that I could do to give them the correct answers in life, to bring them joy, and for them to know that I love them unconditionally. That's it.
And we thank you. And this episode has been absolutely amazing. I hope that you have liked it. Actually, how have you liked being on the pod? That's another last question, I guess we can ask you.
With the juice, it's been a joy.
Oh, and just so people understand, yes, even my mother, she calls me Juice. So that is not something that is unstandard to this world. So when you catch me outside, just say, hey, what's up, Juice? You know what I'm saying? It's fine by that. We really appreciate you coming onto the show. It has been amazing. I hope that you love the queen and all of her shining, sparkling self. It has been an amazing time. We thank you again. This has been the Squeeze Pod. Again, everybody, if you like the show, please come down in the comments. Let us know what you would like to see more of. If you just wanted to, show some respect and keep it pushing, please hit that like button. It just helps us to grow. And if you really, really want to support the channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're updated with every little thing we're doing. And this is your boy Juice signing out. And again, Miss Senior DC, thank you.
I love you, Juice.
I love you too very much, Mother. Again, this has been my mom, one of our #1 supporters. I hope you guys have liked it. Peace.
Peace.